Okay, let's unpack this. What if every investment decision you made wasn't just about crunching the numbers, or staring at charts, but really understanding, well, the fabric of human society itself? Imagine like a world where you could actually benchmark your investments against a digital twin of the whole global economy.
And what's really fascinating here is how Alfredo Baraldi, he's the chief investment officer at Wetradetogether Corporation, how he sees this totally changing financial analysis.
Yeah.
With their platform, ChronoTwin.
A revolution, he calls it.
Yeah. He basically argues that the old way, technical analysis, is becoming fundamentally obsolete.
Yeah.
Outdated. And his company is poised to sort of redefine predictive trading.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive, tailored for you, is really to explore this pretty bold new vision. We're pulling insights directly from an exclusive interview we saw with Alfredo Baraldi, and it's a conversation that goes, well, way beyond just typical stock market chat. And here's where it gets really interesting. Alfredo believes this isn't some far-off dream. It's actually possible now, thanks to this incredible surge in GPU computing power.
That's the key enabler, really.
Yeah, he points out what used to need, like a $20,000 A100 GPU card, the kind of thing only big institutions had.
Right.
Now you can get analysis power that approaches that with desktop hardware. Stuff costing maybe between $1,000 and $2,000.
It's a huge democratization of power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about speed, is it? It's about handling complexity.
Exactly. It's the ability of these, let's say, democratized GPUs to run these massive interconnected neural networks, the kind that can model all these complex nonlinear links between millions of different social, cultural, economic data points, things that just weren't feasible before outside supercomputing centers.
And this cost reduction, this accessibility, that's what lets Wetradetogether build what they're calling a digital replica. A replica of the most relevant bits of the socio-economic ecosystem.
With the New York Stock Exchange right at the heart of it.
Yes, with the NYSE as a central node, basically.
Yeah.
And the goal is to predict market movements with, well, unprecedented precision.
This really challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom about predicting markets, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Okay, so get ready to maybe rethink everything you thought you knew about how markets actually move. So let's start with that big claim Baraldi makes. That traditional technical analysis is like fundamentally outdated. That's a big statement.
It is bold.
What's the core flaw he sees in it? Why doesn't it cut it anymore?
Well, he argues that back when he started in algorithmic trading, maybe around 2010, everyone was just observing the surface, focusing only on prices, volumes, chart patterns, the usual stuff.
Right, the classic indicator.
Exactly. But his insight, his argument, is that like 99%, the vast majority of what actually drives the market comes from deeper sources. Things like social dynamics, geopolitical tensions, cultural shifts, things that happen long before you ever see a price flicker on a chart.
Wow, 99%. That's almost everything except the price itself.
Yeah.
But how do you even start to measure that stuff? Social influence, cultural change? It sounds so messy, so unstructured.
That was precisely the bottleneck for a long, long time. You hit the nail on the head. It wasn't just needing computers to crunch numbers faster, but needing them to interpret this qualitative, messy human data.
Okay.
But Baraldi stresses that today, because computing capabilities are so much more accessible, traders can now start to interpret both the financial data linked to human behavior and the broader systemic environment. You don't have to just focus narrowly anymore.
And this used to be just for the big hedge funds and investment banks.
Absolutely. Exclusive domain of large firms with massive research departments and data scientists. But now, it's potentially within reach for a much wider audience. Individuals, smaller firms.
Okay, so if we're moving beyond charts and volume, what's the alternative? What is Wetradetogether actually building with ChronoTwin? What does that framework look like?
So their answer is this ChronoTwin platform. They call it a digital twin of the human economy.
The human economy specifically.
Yes, and importantly, it's not trying to replicate all of society. That would be impossible. But a significant, relevant chunk of it. Baraldi described starting from what he calls an economic zero point. Think of it as a foundational model.
Okay.
Built on established economic principles. And then against that baseline, they layer and contextualize all the behavioral data.
Which involves cleaning up petabytes of data. That sounds like a job.
A massive job. Meticulously cleaning petabytes of human and environmental data. And that cleaning is critical. It's about telling the difference between, say, a real social signal online versus just noise. or putting a geopolitical event in context, making sure only the behavioral data that actually seems to impact the economy feeds the twin, filtering out all the irrelevant chatter.
That foundational approach, building from zero, it sounds incredibly ambitious. What are the sort of intellectual pillars holding this up? What disciplines feed into ChronoTwin?
It is very ambitious, and it rests on three main pillars: behavioral economics, economic sociology, and economic anthropology.
Okay, behavioral economics. I get that understanding biases and irrationality.
Right, but it's more than just acknowledging biases exist. It's about monitoring how those biases spread through social networks, predicting how, say, a wave of collective fear or excitement might amplify a market trend, or maybe even kill it off in ways traditional models just completely miss.
Okay, that's interesting. And economic sociology. That one intrigues me more. How does understanding social structures help predict stock prices?
Well, economic sociology recognizes that economic actions don't happen in a vacuum. They're deeply embedded in social structures, in relationships, in norms.
So it's not just about a company's earnings report.
Exactly. It might be that a tech stock drops not just because of fundamentals, but because the social perception of its technology shifts. Maybe there's a backlash. Or perhaps a regulatory change driven by public opinion creates ripples through the economy. It connects the social and the economic.
And the third one, economic anthropology.
That allows them to describe how economic systems actually function differently across the globe, considering unique cultural specificities. It helps them move beyond a sort of one-size-fits-all Western model of economic behavior.
So ChronoTwin pulls data from all these perspectives: behavioral, sociological, anthropological.
Yes, and then it synchronizes all that data in real time with the actual price trends of financial instruments, stocks, bonds, commodities like oil, safe havens like gold.
And it's descriptive, you said. Not trying to find direct cause A leads to effect B.
Correct. It's purely descriptive. They're not trying to say, this tweet caused that price drop. It's more about observing how broad societal shifts are reflected, almost like a mirror, in market prices over time.
Okay, theory sounds compelling. Can you give us a practical example? Something ChronoTwin might pick up that a traditional model would likely miss completely?
Sure. Baraldi gave the example of oil prices during the pandemic.
Okay, yeah. Huge volatility then.
Right. And traditional models would be looking at, supply figures, demand forecasts, strategic reserves, OPEC meeting minutes.
Standard stuff.
Standard stuff. But with ChronoTwin, they weren't just tracking obvious things like work-from-home trends affecting commutes. They detected a subtle but accelerating shift in online discussions, specifically about micro-mobility solutions, things like e-bikes, scooters, especially in cities.
Ah, interesting. People looking for alternatives.
Exactly. And they saw this trend gathering steam months before it translated into really significant measurable changes in gasoline consumption habits. So it wasn't just one data point. It was an early signal of a deeper cultural shift towards different kinds of transport, impacting a huge industry. That's a predictive insight you wouldn't get just from oil inventory reports.
That goes way beyond supply and demand numbers. It's incredible how many seemingly unrelated factors might feed into this model.
It really broadens the scope.
Okay, with all this complex, messy human data discussions, sentiments, cultural shifts, how do you actually train an AI effectively? How does it learn to find meaningful connections in all that noise?
Yeah, that's the core challenge. And this is where they bring in something they call deep social learning.
Deep social learning, okay.
So instead of just feeding the AI stock prices in volumes, they pump in these massive data sets, petabytes of behavioral information. Every transaction they can track, financial discussions on social media, demographic shifts, geopolitical events, cultural trend data, everything.
Pouring it all in.
Pouring it all in. Yeah. And the AI's job is then to learn to recognize the social patterns that tend to precede significant market movements. It's effectively learning to discern these subtle, maybe causal, maybe correlational links within incredibly noisy and diverse behavioral data.
So it's not just seeing that the price moved, it's starting to understand the underlying why based on the social context.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Exactly. Baraldi used an analogy. It's like teaching a child not just words, but the emotions, the cultural context, the social implications behind those words. So their AI wouldn't just see, say, Tesla's stock price rising. It tries to understand the why. Maybe it connects it to a generational shift in attitudes towards sustainability, amplified by certain online influencers, all happening within a context of growing environmental awareness post-pandemic.
Yeah, that's a much deeper level of understanding than traditional financial AI.
It's a profound shift from how machine learning has typically been applied in finance, which is often more pattern recognition on price data itself.
Okay, this sounds potentially revolutionary, game-changing even. But, every powerful new tool comes with risks or challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles or dangers they face with a system this complex?
That's a really important question. One significant concern that comes up is the potential for a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Ah, right. If everyone starts trading based on the same prediction.
Exactly. If too many traders were using ChronoTwin, or systems very much like it, they could theoretically start to artificially create the very market movements the system is predicting.
Which could make things unstable.
Potentially, yes. It could destabilize the whole system if not managed carefully. So there's a delicate balance there between prediction and actually influencing the market.
Fascinating. Okay, looking ahead then, Baraldi paints this picture, maybe 10 years out, where basically every investment decision will be made with help from digital twins like this. Digital twins of the socio-economic ecosystem. What does that world actually look like?
Well, he believes the whole idea of investing based only on balance sheets and price charts will seem, well, primitive, almost quaint. Portfolios, he thinks, won't just be optimized for financial return. They'll be optimized considering social impact, environmental factors, cultural alignment, fitting in with broader trends like ESG investing.
So values-based investing gets baked in.
Baked in and driven by much richer data about actual societal dynamics. He even imagines having his own personal financial AI assistant, not just a trading bot, but like a support tool, giving him deep understanding of the implications of different choices beyond just the money.
And he mentioned a specific system they have, DGX.
Ah, yes, he's proud of their DGX system. It's basically a desktop version of their platform. It's named similarly to NVIDIA's powerful DGX stations, which are like data centers in a box. Wetradetogether's system essentially condenses the massive computational power needed to run this real-time behavioral economy replica into a workstation.
So that brings us back to that affordable desktop power enabling all this.
Precisely. It's a tangible example of that $1,000 to $2,000 hardware, making this kind of complex, real-time analysis accessible.
Right. So let's recap a bit. We've taken a pretty deep look into Wetradetogether's ChronoTwin. It's a platform proposing a really radical shift, isn't it? Moving away from just numbers and saying that to understand financial markets, you have to understand this incredibly complex tapestry of human behavior and societal dynamics.
And we connect that to the bigger picture. Yeah, it means moving way beyond simply analyzing prices and volumes. Baraldi's core vision emphasizes that most of what influences markets, he claims 99%, stems from those deeper social dynamics, geopolitical stuff, cultural changes, and that these happen long before the price actually reflects them.
Which requires a different kind of analysis.
Definitely. It requires interpreting both the financial data that is linked to human behavior and the systemic environment around it, using tools from behavioral economics, economic sociology, economic anthropology.
And for you listening to this, the advice from Alfredo Baraldi is actually pretty profound, I think, he says. Start thinking like an economic anthropologist. The question isn't just which stock will go up. It's more like what social changes are happening right now that are creating new economic opportunities or risks.
Which really leads to a crucial question for anyone interested in this space. How can you use artificial intelligence, maybe even simpler forms of data analysis, to better understand society? And as a result, understand the markets better. The whole aim is to make trading less about guesswork or pure hazard and more like a scientific understanding of ourselves, really, as an economic species.
Ultimately, ChronoTwin's goal seems to be demonstrating that financial markets aren't just abstract numbers floating around. They're a living, breathing reflection of human societies. So, for your final provocative thought today, if every price movement actually tells a human story, what stories are we currently missing by focusing only on the numbers? Consider what new insights you might unlock, maybe in your own life or your work, just by looking beyond the surface data and into those deeper social and behavioral currents that drive the systems all around.